It's another Thunder Thursday on News OK. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, here from the Oklahoman Studios, 100 West Main, downtown Oklahoma City. Joining me are Thunder beat writers Anthony Slater, Eric Horn, and columnist Jenny Carlson. And we're starting on a somber note, frankly. Last night, we received word of the death of the wife of Thunder assistant coach Monty Williams. Ingrid Williams died as a result of injuries she suffered in a car accident on Western, not very far here from Chesapeake Energy Arena. We knew a lot about Monty Williams from his coaching career. You guys have learned a lot about him, the character of the man, and the family. Anthony, what do we know? What more do we know about Monty Williams and his wife?
I think what's been telling is just the outpouring of support, and I'm not talking just the Thunder, although it's been good from that side, or just the Pelicans where he coached for 5 years where, they had guys crying in the locker room. Ryan Anderson couldn't even speak about it yesterday. Kevin Durant, you probably saw the video today. But, it's just popping up everywhere. Marco Bellinelli, Nicholas Batum, Greg Popovich apparently didn't even go to his media session last night in San Antonio because he knows Monty well and he knows the wife. And I think what we've seen through this is it's not just Monty, but it is her. We don't see it as much, but the people that are behind the scenes, the players, everyone, they see what. From what I gather, Monty's kind of the rock for a lot of these players, but they know the rock for him was Ingrid, and obviously a sad tragedy.
I wonder too, you talk about sort of the fingers of this that have gone out, and Monty Williams was obviously coaching Team USA, has a lot of involvement with the national team and just different things that he's done. It's sort of a reminder that when these guys are involved with international play, they get to know those guys. It's not just the head coaches. Obviously, Mike Krzyzewski getting a lot of attention, but they've got these NBA coaches that are also assistants on that roster. And when they get that team together, they have these camps where guys work out more. It's not just the team; it's an extended roster. And obviously, the team gets whittled down. They go overseas to different things. So I think in those instances, you're not only talking about players getting to know those coaches who might not have ever coached them otherwise, but then families, their families are going overseas to these events as well, and so they do get to know, the spouses, the kids, in maybe a way that you're not thinking about until something like this happens.
Eric, you were in the office yesterday when the news broke. You wrote the first story for us, and I remember something you said to me about Monty and Ingrid's children.
Yeah, if you're walking in the halls of Chesapeake Energy Arena past the locker room after games or before games, you'll see Monty Williams' kids running about with Williams Thunder jerseys on. You'll see Ingrid with the kids. He's got 5 kids, age range from 5 to 17. And Monty Williams, as he's a father figure to a lot of NBA players, he was a father, first and foremost. He is a father, and his wife, as we said, is a strong part of that. They met when he was at Notre Dame more than 25 years ago. She's been the rock of that family, apparently, and she's done a lot to help him throughout his NBA journey as a coach and a former player.
And Monty Williams, of course, played at Notre Dame, played for the New York Knicks, San Antonio Spurs, coached in New Orleans. We're starting to extend a lot of tentacles. When you start talking about those places, you're extending a lot of tentacles. Then there's the international stuff. So a man who, from all accounts, is well-liked, well-respected, and very well-connected across the league, and I think that's a result that you see in the outpouring of it. And, of course, we don't know a lot about this, but we know that there have been reports that a couple of the children were injured, those injuries not expected to be life-threatening or not thought to be life-threatening, but a family. And at this time, the Thunder acts like our communities come to expect it to act. They're very, very supportive, and a lot of the reaction from the Thunder is about as we expected, Anthony.
Yeah, a moment of silence the night before the game. They actually have the pastor from the Williams Church will be doing kind of the moment of silence and the prayer before the game. The Thunder say anyone that wants to bring flowers to bring them to this, I believe, the southeast side of the arena. You can be going to the game night. You don't have to be going to the game night. Cards, anything. They've sent out on their official Twitter an address to send anything as well. Like you said, as we'd expect, the Thunder are handling this well. And then another thing, I do think the All-Star break now comes at a really good time for this team, for Monty Williams, the coaching staff, just kind of everyone around that organization.
The Another first, though, with this. We
Yeah.
we went through, Jenny, for a long time, we would say, well, this is the first 50 point. This is the first time tragedy really sort of struck at the heart of this franchise.
Directly.
Directly.
Yeah.
There's been some things around, but I mean, this is somebody they brought here, Monty Williams, for a very specific purpose in a very important year. What have you guys seen about him from a coaching standpoint?
Well, the thing that stands out to me, and you guys have seen it more consistently as you've covered these games, but I sort of flash back to, again, it's that international experience where we saw some of that live camp footage, essentially, from the national team when I think they were out in Vegas, and you saw Monty Williams interacting with Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, a couple guys that he knew he was going to be coaching on a daily basis, and just how they really seem to kind of take to him. And I think that that's pretty evident. We saw Kevin Durant's response, his reaction to this, and I think that was telling. But then you mentioned the Pelicans, several of us have, and here they are in town tonight. And when he gets fired a year ago, that was just devastating to that locker room. I mean, he had connected with those guys. The management decided to go in a different direction, but it was pretty clear that the players would have loved to have seen him stay there for as long as possible. So just that connection, and now here they are in town on this tragic occasion. It's just, in some ways, I'm sure it's been heartening to Monty Williams to have those guys close.
Yeah, one thing about, you kind of mentioned it with Durant, I mean, they are together after pretty much every single practice. It's usually Monty and Kevin, and they're working out with Dion Waiters, Anthony Morrow, and Royale Ivy over there. But you could tell Monty is a mentor to Kevin. They're always working on post defense, and Monty's athletic enough that he is posting Kevin Durant up, and then they'll stop and talk. And then the other thing with them is they're from the same area of the the DC area, and Kevin's talked about really looking up to Monty since he's gotten to know him at the Olympics, and how they're both religious guys. So this guy's been here for less than a year, and I mean, you could just tell the impact he's had.
The way that they interact during the games, particularly Billy Donovan and Monty Williams, is fascinating to me. You got guys like Steve Kerr in Golden State, who has these head coaches around him that are this cocoon. These guys, Alvin Gentry, who's gone on to New Orleans, and these guys who have had teams previously. But that's how it is for Billy Donovan with Monty Williams. Monty Williams will come up to him during the game and whisper something in his ear, tell him what's going on, suggest a timeout, things like that. Monty Williams is almost like a second coach. He's really somebody who Billy Donovan really can go to in situations of need. And he's been critical for this team this year, getting off to the start that they've gotten off to, with Billy Donovan being a first-year guy.
You guys Anthony, I think you made the point about the All-Star game sort of coming out of, we're here. And sort of as a transition in that, the All-Star game, you're going to Toronto, and all is no longer quiet on the Western Front when it comes to Kevin Durant free agency talk. You wrote a good story. That was perfect, and it seems like since you hit send on that story, you sparked it. Last week it was Kevin Durant, and the headline and the story was, if Kevin Durant leaves Oklahoma City, Golden State is a leader. Okay, that sort of got smushed together.
I think that's the one thing in literally any of this rumors. There's not ever been one time where anyone said, he's wavering on Oklahoma City. I mean, even when there are these huge stories about the Warriors being front runners, like you said, it's always if he leaves Oklahoma City, and at this point, that doesn't, he's not leaning that way at all. So that's the big thing in all this. You mentioned All-Star Weekend, which is just everyone just kind of assembles there. I do expect him to get a lot of questions, some of them strange, some of them relevant. I'm interested to see, because he's been fantastic at answering them honestly, at brushing them off, at really handling all season. I'm interested if he gets bombarded with it. And then you also throw, we've been talking about Monty Williams. He's might not be in the best mindset when he's up there. He will be talking to the media tomorrow and Saturday for half hour. Pretty much anyone that wants to lob a question his way. And
it'll be interesting going back to Monty Williams to just get a gauge on how his connection is to many of these all-stars, the game's top players, one way or the other. We talked about free agent talk. Eric, one of the constant refrains of Westbrook and Durant is that they don't talk about it. They say, we don't talk about that. You buy it?
No. I mean, maybe they don't talk about it as much as we think they might talk about it, but they probably mention it here and there, and particularly when, I don't know, maybe they have some downtime, they're sitting there and they say, look, these two guys are two of the top 5 players in the world. To think that they don't have some idea of what the other is thinking about free agency this year and then in 2017 where Durant might be a free agent again, it'd be silly and naive of us to think that they don't talk about it at all. It's discussed, but probably not that much. It comes up every now and then, I'd imagine.
Well, I mean, one thing, if you're Kevin Durant and, you know, I do think he's looking at this season, what happens here, if they win a title, all this stuff. But if you're Kevin Durant and you're deciding, do I sign in Oklahoma City long term? Don't you want to know that that Russell Westbrook's going to be here long term?
Yeah.
You know, obviously the 1-year contract he might sign, and that's kind of floating out there, and that makes sense because of where Russell Westbrook's at. But Russell Westbrook's if he says they don't talk about it, then he knows the media can't push him any deeper. So I mean, I just think that's why he's answering it that way.
The thing that strikes me, guys, is so many people have wanted answers to the question about Durant for a long time. I mean, we've heard it forever, and yet it's just. It almost makes me laugh because even from the start 2 years ago or year and a half
Pretty
ago,
much right after LeBron said he was going home, people just went
picked up.
Who else?
And I remember saying at the time, we have to see what happens. We have to see what happens in Oklahoma City. We have to see what happens in other places. And we've seen things happen that have changed the dynamic. Washington, the Wizards were such a hot destination spot for him. Well, now their franchise, their future, their hopes, where they're headed looks vastly different than where it did a year ago at this time.
It actually looks like it has for most of the last 25 years.
Yeah, they've actually come back to earth. But, again, I was reminded of this week, guys, when the Knicks fired Derek Fisher, and some people said, well, are they going to make the next hire to get Kevin Durant? I mean, could they hire Scott Brooks to get Kevin Durant? And I said, wait, didn't they hire Derek Fisher to get Kevin Durant? I mean, it's just so funny to me how dynamics change, situations change, and yet people are still trying to figure this all out when there's so much left to be played this year.
And then in the aggregation world, it just gets plucked out of like a one line here gets plucked. It's like report, this and that, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Not to point any fingers, we play that game somewhat ourselves. I hope we play it a little bit better, and I hope we leave in the idea if he leaves Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
That was something that got smoothed out. Any other big? Now I guess we're going as soon as we come out of that, we're on to the trade deadline, which will be next Thursday. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe the 18th.
Yeah,
next 2 p.m. Central Time.
And so a year ago at this time, of course, was the trade of Kendrick Perkins in the
It's a trade of
blockbuster
like
deal.
200 people. You remember that entire day?
And Reggie Jackson, of course, they left Oklahoma City. In came Enes Kanter, DJ Augustine, and never forget.
I remember it was on a Thursday because we were on Thunder
We were
Thursday.
sitting right here on
And
Thunder
meltdown mode from 3 of our cast members.
I still would like to see some defense being played.
That's
I still
true.
miss Kendrick Perkins.
Okay, and our good friend Darnell has been out there on the trade machine. He's asked our readers. He's asked our readers, which I think is interesting, what trades they think should come. So let's ask about what's the most practical deal out there in each of your minds for the Thunder.
I'm probably going to take the one, Eric, because we talked. A quick plug. Go to our podcast. Me, him, and Barry chatted about it a little bit, but. This is not going to be a big deal. They're not going to make a huge, roster-changing move where it's Ibaka for Blake Griffin and all that.
Last year they did.
They did, and they did their work last year in a lot of ways.
But we sort of knew that was coming because we knew that Reggie Jackson wasn't staying.
Yeah.
We knew there was going to be a big
there was
piece
Brooke Lopez.
move.
Remember, the Brooke Lopez rumors were floating around for weeks before that.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, if I had to guess right now, I'd say nothing gets done. But I could see
That'd be rare.
Yeah, no, it will be. The deal that I was referring to that we talked about on the podcast, so he can kind of hitch on to this. It was P.J. Tucker from the Suns for Mitch McGary and DJ Augustine. McGary's a young option to give the Suns that he's not playing in Oklahoma City. He gives them a potential look at the future. Augustine's just a calming force to play point guard for a team that's imploding right now, just for the rest of the season. And then from the Suns, or P.J. Tucker, I think works for the Thunder because he's a wing option. I don't know if I'd go two-way. He can hit some threes. He can provide a little bit offensively, but he's a tough, big defender. Think about throwing him in a Warriors game. He could guard Klay Thompson. He could switch on to Draymond Green. He could even switch on to Steph Curry at times. I think he's a player that would really help.
And he wouldn't steal the ball from Kevin Durant anymore, except just in practice. That's what.
Maybe toughen him up in practice.
Is that your deal?
It was my deal. It is still the deal that I think it would be the best for the Thunder. Not so much from adding a player that can add something in terms of the two-way guy we're looking for, but the grit, the tenacity that we're looking for, the what people want, that tenacity on defense.
He's got this too, right?
Yeah, and he's got that hook 'em, and he's got the Texas.
If you're trading away DJ Augustine, don't you have to
gotta
get another
get a Texas
Texas
alum.
alum in the locker room?
Royal Ivy has demanded it. Yeah.
Along the same lines of adding the grit, you could add the grit and grind of Tony Allen. I thought that would be an intriguing trade, a Tony Allen, Courtney Lee deal. Everybody's been throwing around Courtney Lee as a guy who can potentially hit a three, play some defense at the shooting guard position, and then you would send Mitch McGary, DJ Augustine to the Grizzlies' way. But the thing that I think might kill that deal would be the Grizzlies would be like, all right, toss Campaign in there too because he's a Memphis boy, and the Thunder might balk on that one.
Yeah, that's the thing with all these deals is like I could think of 100 trades right now that would help the Thunder, but you'll have to look at it from the other person's perspective
And
too.
that's what that to me is the big question in all of this is what do you give up? Because, like the Suns, for example, they are in, implosion mode. They're just deconstructing everything. So I think there are options there, but you're not going to find a ton of teams like the Suns that are just willing to say, we're going to slough off salary, we're just going to, take draft picks where we can, or whatever they're trying to do out there. So there just aren't many of those. And even though Memphis, which I think Courtney Lee, that's the one that I've sort of been thinking, well, maybe there's an option to do that. But still, I think what you said, Anthony, is exactly right. People want to know, well, who could they get? Well, who do you want to give up? I mean, what are you willing to sacrifice for maybe 2-3 more wins? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what you're looking to get.
Is there a move out there that you hop the Warriors suddenly? You know
exactly.
what I mean? So that's the.
See, that's the thing. When you're talking about the trade-off, like you say, there's a ton of players that you could say, well, they would really help the Thunder. But are you mortgaging the future? Are you giving away, a Campaign who looks like a guy that could really not only help you with that second unit, but really mesh with that late unit, coming up down the line? You just have to really think, what do you have to give away? I just think the stakes are too high to get anybody that could thrust you forward in a huge way right now.
And one thing to remember, they do not have a first-round pick 2 out of the next 3 years. That was the Canner deal and the Waiters deal. So that takes away a potential piece that doesn't, eat into the team this year. I think Mitch McGary is potentially the guy to dangle. I would have said Memphis is like, they're not going to give the Thunder anything, but I do think the Marc Gasol injury, he broke his foot recently, potentially throws them into like seller mode. We'll see.
As recent as a week ago, I would have thought that the Grizzlies and even a team like the Rockets would have been a team that's going to say, we're going to hold on to our pieces and we're going to try and make a run at this playoff thing. But, the Rockets look like a team that could be ready to deal with some guys. Trevor Ariza, Corey Brewer. The Grizzlies look like a team with the Gasol injury that could be in sale mode too. It's kind of like that they're toeing that fence like a team that wants to get into the Major League Baseball wild card race, or they want to sell off all their guys. Like, what are they going to do?
Yeah, and then another thing with some of this is like other teams are also trying to get these guys. Like the Raptors are interested in PJ Tucker, so that gives the Suns more room to say, oh, can we also get Cameron Payne, that type of thing. And a lot of teams, do teams really want to give the Thunder a missing piece to suddenly make turn them into a juggernaut?
Yeah, the Grizzlies or the Rockets real excited about that?
Yeah.
Is there a juggernaut? Is there a juggernaut propulsion unit out there for them? I don't see one. And also remember, the expiring contracts ain't what they used to be.
No.
With the salary cap going to explode, $20 million next year and $20 million more the following year? My numbers might be off a little bit, but nobody's looking for salary cap relief.
No, at this point they're just matching money. You know what I mean? Like Novak could be in a deal because it just matches the money. It's not because they need Steve Novak.
So DJ Augustine's expiring contract, not a big deal.
Dion Waiters is, though, he is expiring, and a team that trades for him would have his rights because he was on the rookie deal where he's expiring, but they would have his rights. Is a team interested in matching him this offseason? That's a better question.
Is Waiters, okay, so I'll ask you this. The Thunder has never gone to restricted free agency with one of its own players. It did with Canner, who it acquired.
Yeah.
But it never didn't make it there with Jeff Green, didn't make it there with James Harden. Didn't make it there with Reggie Jackson.
Yeah.
I guess you could put an asterisk that Dion Waiters technically was not their own drafted player. Will Dion Waiters still be with the Thunder after the trade
I think they're
deadline?
fine going to restricted free agency with him. I mean, this is a different version, a different iteration of the Thunder where, it's going for it now. They're trying to win it now. They're trying to prove to Kevin Durant this is the place.
Yeah.
This isn't, the James Harden situation. I think they would have gone with Reggie Jackson to restricted free agency if they had gotten reciprocation from Reggie that he's comfortable in his role, he might sign back, he wants to be there. Clearly they didn't get that, and they knew it would be a mess this offseason. They turned it into Enes Kanter. We're comfortable going to restricted free agency because they knew they were going to match no matter what. They ended up having to match about the worst deal they could have matched.
It is sort of interesting, though, Mike, what you bring up is a great point. The way that the sands have shifted underneath the whole, what's valued and what, Sam Presti for a long time has talked about, having different resources sort of at his disposal. A draft pick here, a guy maybe down the roster here. Just different pieces that he could work with to sweeten a deal. He liked to acquire those. Sometimes they didn't seem like much, but they were sort of those puzzle pieces that he could cobble together when working deals. And now with all of these changes, some that we understand, some that we don't, and some, frankly, I'm not sure the teams understand at this point how it's all going to shake out. What do teams do with all of this is a little bit of an up in the air thing. So some of the, benchmarks that we say, well, the Thunder has never X or the Thunder has always Y. Is that changing? And do we know tendencies like we used to? It's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. Maybe not this trade deadline, but maybe moving forward, some of those things look a little differently.
Sam hasn't always made a trade at the deadline, but he's always made an acquisition around the deadline. He bought out Caron Butler.
Derek Fisher.
He signed bought out Derek Fisher.
He's available again, by the way. Is there any chance?
Now, that's an interesting idea. I had not thought about this. One more question about the trade deadline.
I was going to say, you mentioned, I think Joe Johnson's probably going to get bought out by the Nets. His huge mega deal in Brooklyn, because nobody really is trying to trade for that deal right now. But if he gets bought out, I don't know. I mean, he's kind of ISO Joe is his nickname. But he's an interesting name, I think.
Especially when you call him ISO Joe. You're the Spanish Manu Ginobili, one of your favorites, Alex
Abrines.
Yes, that's right. Last year they traded Tibor Pleiss at the trade deadline, the unicorn, the guy that we never saw, and he finally made it over and now playing for the Jazz. Any chance that Alex is in the deal?
Maybe. I think they'd have to feel like Waiters is the answer at the shooting guard. I think they really like Alex Abrines, especially at that shooting guard position where they have a hole right now. The one thing with the deal, why they gave up Pleiss, is they were getting Enes Kanter, a 23-year-old post player, in the deal. So Pleiss didn't have a spot to come over. Whereas Abrines, I think, would have a spot if he chooses to come over, especially if they don't re-sign Dion Waiters. Okay,
We're going to go forward to the trade deadline. That's next week. But before we close today, let's go back to the big game. Super Saturday. What lesson is worth remembering from that game? And Eric, I'll call on you first. What's a lingering lesson from Golden State Warriors Thunder round one?
I'll go with the effectiveness of Enes Kanter. I mean, being able to throw him out there and not have him get buried by the Warriors' small ball lineups and having him come down with 15, 14 rebounds the way he did, I think that showed a lot of people, the Thunder themselves, nationally, that Enes Kanter can play against the Warriors and be effective, and that's going to be huge for them going forward.
Yeah.
That was a cool little matchup deal when he put him on Livingston.
Yeah.
And took him out of the line of fire of pick and roll that way. So, and the Warriors certainly don't do a ton of pick and roll, so maybe that's something Enes Kanter doesn't get hung up on. Jenny, you got a lesson?
I think it's something that we talked about before the game, but it continued. I was sort of reminded, and it continues. Obviously we knew the Warriors were going to be a tough matchup for the Thunder defense, and that played out in myriad ways. But let's remember, the Warriors don't have much answer for Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook either. So there's little doubt in my mind that if it becomes a Warriors-Thunder Western Conference Final Series, the Warriors don't want any part of those guys for 6 or 7 games because they just don't have an answer. And when you throw in things like what Enes Kanter did and what they have the ability to do with different lineups, I think that should really, maybe not strike fear in the heart of the Warriors, but it's definitely a problem.
I don't think I mean, look, the Warriors are the class of the league right now, but nobody wants a part of the Thunder. I mean, as bad as their defensive issues are, and they have just as good an offense as the Warriors. Really, I mean, like Steph Curry's doing what he's doing, but Durant, what Westbrook has become. You mentioned Enes Kanter. Serge Ibaka had a really bad game. If he can have a good game, I think the Thunder win that game. Steven Adams now on that lob. They beat the Warriors with that maybe 4 or 5 times in that game.
Ibaka had a bad game by points and rebounds, but there was no need for more points. They had all the points that you could get.
He was poor defensively in the first half, I thought.
Everybody was.
Yeah, no, that's true. There was a time
they were getting ready to put you in on defense
yeah,
at one point.
To have your
That's a good choice. Why didn't they?
To have
Billy's worst move in the night.
To have their bench get smoked the way they did in terms of scoring and come within, 6, 8 points? How many points did they lose by?
Yeah.
You got to feel positive about the next matchup.
What's your lesson? Have you stated already?
I think part of that is what we're talking about. I just think the overarching thing is I thought Billy Donovan had a pretty good game.
That's a good point.
I thought you mentioned putting him on Livingston. It allowed them to stay out there. That kind of confused the Warriors a bit. I mean, that was the lineup that the Warriors have killed teams all year, and they actually got outscored most of the fourth quarter. He staggered in the second half. Durant didn't come out to start the fourth like he usually does, and then when he eventually did come out, it was when Westbrook was coming in. That allowed them to kind of stem any type of tide. I thought he showed some things that made Steve Kerr probably have to think and adjust to, and I think it just proved maybe to some of us that it's going to be interesting to see. This is a coach that can in-game adjust, can maybe in-series adjust, and the Warriors are coming here February 27th. So.
I might have heard that. Yeah.
We'll cover that thing, I think. In fact, we'll cover tonight's game, the Thunder against the New Orleans Pelicans, 7 o'clock, Chesapeake Energy Arena. Easy for me to say. These guys will be there. That's all for this edition of Thunder Thursday, but you can stay with the best coverage team every day is okay and every morning in the Oklahoman.